rich son fell with untied shoelaces, but only one girl offered her hand and taught him how. One morning, Daniel walked to school with his small backpack bouncing on his shoulders. His father was a millionaire, known all over town for his big house and fancy cars. People called Daniel the rich son, and every child in school knew who he was. But Daniel wasn't like his father. He was quiet, shy, and lonely. Even though he had the best clothes and toys, he never felt like he fit in. Other kids stayed away from him. Some whispered that he was spoiled. Some teased him. Others simply ignored him. As Daniel stepped into the playground, his shoelaces came loose again. He looked down, frustrated. He had tried so many times to tie them the way his dad showed him, but he could never make the knot stay. He bent down to fix it, but the bell rang, and kids rushed past him, bumping into him as they ran toward the classroom line. Daniel stumbled. His foot caught on the lace, and before he could catch himself, he fell hard on the ground. The dust stuck to his clean white shirt, and his knees burned from the scrape. For a moment, the world went quiet around him. Then came the laughter. "Look, the rich boy can't even walk straight," one boy shouted. "He doesn't even know how to tie his shoes," another added. Daniel's cheeks turned red. He wanted to disappear. He pushed himself up, but his hands shook. The kids who stood around didn't help. They just stared, smirking, as if his fall was entertainment. And then, through the circle of faces, one girl stepped forward. She was small with bright eyes and a simple ponytail. She didn't laugh, she didn't mock. She just bent down and reached out her hand. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, surprised. No one had ever spoken to him like that before, not at school. Slowly, he took her hand. She helped him stand, brushing the dirt from his shirt. "You should tie your laces," she said kindly. I don't know how," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking a little. The girl smiled. "I can show you." She knelt down, took the two laces in her fingers, and patiently tied them into a neat bow. Daniel watched closely, his eyes wide, as if she was performing magic. "There," she said, standing up. "Now they won't come undone." For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt warmth in his chest. Someone had cared. Someone had seen him not as the millionaire's son, but just as a boy who needed help. He looked at her shyly. "Thank you." She smiled again. "My name's Emily." And that was the moment everything began to change. Emily's smile lingered in Daniel's mind long after she spoke her name. He had never expected someone to treat him kindly in school, let alone help him in front of others. For once, he didn't feel like the rich boy who was always on the outside. He felt human. The bell rang again, and the children lined up to return to their classrooms. Daniel walked slowly, but this time Emily stayed by his side. She chatted as if they had known each other for years. "What's your favorite subject?" she asked. Daniel shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe reading." "I love reading too," Emily said, her eyes brightening. "I like stories that feel real. Like they could happen to anyone." Daniel gave a small nod. He wanted to say more but didn't know how. He wasn't used to someone listening to him. Most of the time, when he spoke, kids rolled their eyes or ignored him. But Emily didn't. She looked right at him, waiting for an answer. When they reached class, Daniel took his usual seat in the back. He expected Emily to move to her own desk, but instead, she pulled out the chair beside him. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked. Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I mean, yes you can," the other kids whispered. Some frowned, others giggled. But Emily didn't seem to care. She opened her notebook and smiled as if sitting next to Daniel was the most natural thing in the world. The morning lessons dragged on. But Daniel wasn't as restless as usual. He kept glancing at Emily, wondering why she wasn't like the others. Most children only saw him as the millionaire's son. The boy with new shoes, new clothes, and a mansion on the hill. But Emily didn't mention any of that. She treated him like he was simply Daniel. At lunch, Emily waved him over. "Come sit with me," she said. Daniel hesitated. He usually ate alone, away from the noise of the playground. But Emily was already walking toward a quiet spot under the big oak tree at the edge of the yard. Slowly, he followed her. Emily pulled out her lunchbox. Inside was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an apple, and a juice box. Daniel opened his shiny silver container. It was packed with pasta, grapes, and cookies. prepared by the house staff that worked in his home. For a moment, Daniel felt uncomfortable. His food looked so fancy compared to hers. He pushed the box a little closer to him, hoping she wouldn't notice. But Emily leaned forward curiously. "That looks good," she said cheerfully. Daniel blinked. "Yo, you don't think it's weird?" "Why would it be weird? Food is food. Want to trade a cookie for half my sandwich?" Daniel's eyes widened. Nobody had ever asked him that before. Sure." He handed her a cookie. And she gave him half her sandwich. He bit into it, surprised at how simple but delicious it was. Emily took a bite of the cookie and smiled. "Wow. This is amazing." Daniel chuckled softly, the first real laugh he'd shared with someone at school. After eating, Emily pointed at his shoes. "Do you want to practice now?" Daniel looked down at his laces. "I'm not sure I'll get it." "You will," she encouraged. "Come on. I'll show you again." She knelt down on the grass, patiently showing him how to cross the laces, loop them, and pull tight. Daniel tried, fumbling a few times, but Emily never laughed. She simply repeated the steps, her voice calm and steady. Finally, Daniel managed to tie them on his own. The knot wasn't perfect, but it stayed. His face lit up with pride.
I did it?
Emily clapped. "See, I told you. You just needed someone to show you." Daniel looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Emily. No one's ever helped me like that before." She shrugged with a smile. That's what friends are for. The word friends echoed in Daniel's mind. He had wanted a friend for so long, but he never thought he would actually find one. Yet here she was, kind, patient, and real. When the lunch bell rang, they headed back to class together. This time, Daniel didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel like the lonely rich boy everyone mocked. He felt like he belonged, even if it was just because of one person. As they walked back, Emily said, "You know, Daniel, being rich doesn't matter to me. Some kids care about stuff like that, but I don't. I just care about how people treat others." Daniel was silent for a moment, then whispered, "Most people don't treat me very nice." "Well, I do," Emily replied firmly. "And I always will." Her words stayed with him all afternoon. For the first time in his life, Daniel couldn't wait for the next day of school. The afternoon sun poured through the classroom windows, painting long golden lines across the floor. Daniel sat straighter in his chair than usual, the corners of his mouth tugging into the smallest of smiles. Emily's words still echoed in his mind. "I do. And I always will." For the first time, the hours of math problems and spelling tests didn't feel heavy. He wasn't counting down minutes until the final bell. Instead, he found himself sneaking glances at Emily, who scribbled notes with quick, confident strokes. But while Daniel felt lighter, not everyone around him shared that feeling. Whispers were spreading. The other kids didn't like what they saw. The richest boy in school, suddenly sitting with someone like Emily, a girl who wasn't popular, who didn't wear fancy clothes, who spoke her mind too freely. Why is she hanging out with him? A boy named Jake muttered to his friend, just loud enough for Daniel to hear. Probably wants his money. The friend snickered. Daniel's stomach sank. He wanted to say something, but his throat closed up. The old weight of embarrassment tried to return, but when he glanced at Emily, she didn't look bothered. She kept her eyes on her work as if their whispers didn't exist. When the bell rang at the end of the day, Daniel packed his books slowly. Usually, he rushed out to escape the noise of kids pushing and laughing in the hallway, but Emily waited by his desk. "Want to walk out together?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "People are staring." "Let them," Emily replied, her voice calm but strong. "I don't care what they think." Daniel looked at her and realized she truly meant it. So he nodded, and together they stepped into the hallway. Heads turned, voices hushed, then rose again in murmurs. Some kids smirked, others frowned. Daniel's chest tightened, but Emily walked tall beside him, her ponytail swinging with each step. Outside, the air was cooler, filled with the sound of buses and parents calling for their children. Daniel spotted his father's black car waiting at the curb. The family driver stood nearby, scanning the crowd for him. "That's your ride?" Emily asked, her eyes widening slightly. Daniel nodded, embarrassed again. "Yeah, my dad's too busy, so the driver picks me up." Emily tilted her head. Must be nice. Daniel shook his head quickly. It's not. I'd rather walk home like everyone else. Emily studied him for a moment, then smiled softly. Maybe one day you can. With me. Daniel's heart skipped. No one had ever said something like that to him before. That night, at home, Daniel sat at the long dining table. His father scrolled through his phone, barely looking up. His mother spoke with someone on a headset about charity events. The house glowed with luxury. Chandeliers, polished floors, expensive paintings on the walls. But it felt empty. Daniel poked at his dinner. The taste of Emily's half-sandwich still fresh in his mind. It had been simple, but it felt warmer than this entire meal. He wanted to tell his parents about her. About how she helped him tie his shoes, how she called him a friend. But he stayed silent. They wouldn't understand. To them, friends came from the same rich circles. The next morning, Daniel hurried to school. For once, he wasn't dragging his feet. He scanned the playground until he spotted Emily under the oak tree. She waved, and something inside him lit up. Hey, wanna practice again? She asked, pointing to his shoes. Daniel grinned shyly. I've been practicing at home. Show me, she insisted. He bent down and tied his laces slowly but carefully. The knot held. Emily clapped her hands. Perfect, see? I knew you could do it. Daniel beamed, pride swelling in his chest. For the first time, he didn't feel clumsy or weak, he felt capable. But not everyone was happy. Jake and a few boys walked over, smirking. Wow. The rich kid learned to tie his shoes. Should we throw a party? Laughter followed. Daniel froze, his face burning. He waited for Emily to step back, to avoid the teasing. But instead, she crossed her arms and glared at Jake. At least he learned, she snapped. When's the last time you taught someone anything useful? Jake's smirk faded. The other boys shuffled uncomfortably. Emily stood firm, her eyes sharp. Finally, Jake muttered something under his breath and walked away. Daniel stared at her in awe. Yo, you stood up for me. Of course I did. Emily said simply. That's what friends do. The rest of the day, Daniel walked a little taller. Not because his laces were tied, but because Emily believed in him when no one else did. He felt something new stirring in his chest. Not just gratitude, but courage. As the final bell rang and students poured out, Emily turned to him. Tomorrow, meet me by the oak tree again. I'll teach you something else. Daniel tilted his head. Something else. Emily smiled. Yeah. You'll see. For the first time in his life. Daniel couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. His alarm had not even rung. Yet his eyes opened with energy he rarely felt. He hurried through breakfast, surprising the housekeeper, who noticed him rushing instead of dragging his feet. By the time the driver pulled up at school, Daniel was already leaning forward, scanning the playground. His heart lifted when he spotted Emily under the oak tree. Her backpack beside her and a book in her lap. She looked up and waved when she saw him. Daniel jogged over, his shoelaces tied neatly. I practiced again last night, he said proudly. Emily leaned down to inspect his shoes. Perfect. I told you. You're a fast learner. Daniel grinned. Then glanced at the book in her hands. What are you reading? Just a story. Emily said. Want me to read it to you later? Daniel hesitated. No one had ever read to him before, not even at home. Yeah, I'd like that. When the bell rang, they walked to class together. Ignoring the looks and whispers. Daniel noticed them of course, but this time they didn't sting as much. Emily's presence made the world feel lighter. During math, Emily slid him a small folded note. Daniel opened it carefully under his desk. It read, meet me at lunch. I'll teach you something new. Daniel's chest buzzed with excitement. All through class, he wondered what it could be. At lunch, they returned to their oak tree. Emily pulled out her sandwich again, and Daniel offered one of his cookies without her even asking. She laughed and accepted it. So, Daniel said nervously. What are you teaching me today? Emily brushed crumbs from her hands and looked serious. Not shoelaces. Something bigger. Daniel leaned in. What is it? Bravery. She said simply. Daniel blinked. Bravery, Emily nodded. Standing up for yourself. Yesterday, you let Jake make fun of you. You didn't say anything. I defended you, but next time you have to try. Daniel's stomach tightened. But, What if they laugh more? They already laugh. Emily replied gently. But if you don't speak, they'll never stop. Sometimes you have to show people you won't let them push you down. Daniel thought about that. All his life, he had stayed quiet, hiding behind silence whenever someone teased him. His parents always told him to ignore it. But ignoring had never made the pain go away. Emily was saying something different, that he had the power to change it. That afternoon, his chance came sooner than he expected. On the playground, Jake strutted toward them again. Look, it's the rich boy and his little bodyguard, he sneered. A few kids laughed. Daniel's throat tightened. His first instinct was to stay silent, to look away. But then he felt Emily's hand brush against his, steadying him. She gave him a small nod. Daniel took a breath. His heart pounded, but he forced the words out. Stop making fun of me. The laughter quieted. Jake raised his eyebrows. What did you say? I said stop. Daniel repeated, louder this time. His voice shook, but he didn't back down. Jake looked surprised. For a moment, he seemed ready to fire back. But something about Daniel's steady gaze made him hesitate. He muttered something under his breath and turned away, the group of boys following him. Daniel exhaled sharply, his knees trembling. Emily squeezed his hand. See? That's bravery. Daniel's chest swelled, not just with relief but with pride. For the first time, he had stood up for himself. That evening at home, Daniel couldn't stop replaying the moment. His parents barely looked up from their work as he walked through the house. He wanted to tell them what happened. But he knew they wouldn't understand. To them, bravery meant winning deals, building companies, or making money. But Daniel knew different now. Bravery could be as small, and as big, as saying, stop. The next day, Emily kept her promise about the book. At lunch, she read aloud under the oak tree. Her voice was calm and clear, each word painting pictures in Daniel's mind. He leaned back against the tree trunk, listening as though the story was a secret only for him. When she finished, Daniel whispered, I wish school could always be like this. Emily smiled. It can be. As long as you remember, you're not alone anymore. Daniel looked at her, warmth filling his chest. You really mean that? Of course, Emily said. That's what friends are for. And in that moment, Daniel realized something: tying shoelaces was only the beginning. Emily was teaching him lessons far more valuable than knots and loops. She was teaching him how to be strong, how to stand tall, and how to believe in himself. That night, as Daniel lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling and whispered the word that had become his favorite friend. For the first time in his life, he felt like tomorrow was worth waiting for. The days passed quickly, each one brighter than the last for Daniel. For so long, school had felt like a place to survive. But now it felt like a place where he belonged. Even if it was just under the oak tree with Emily. They ate lunch together, traded food, laughed at silly jokes, and practiced tying knots until Daniel's fingers moved with ease. With Emily's encouragement, he spoke up more in class, answering questions he once stayed silent on. Mrs. Collins even praised him for his effort, and for the first time, Daniel felt proud of himself. But while Daniel was changing, not everyone liked it. One afternoon, as Emily read her book under the oak tree, Daniel noticed a group of kids whispering nearby. They glanced at him and Emily, then turned back to each other, smirking. When he tried to ignore it, the whispers grew louder. She's only friends with him because he's rich. One girl said. Yeah, she probably wants him to buy her stuff. Another added. I bet she's just pretending. A boy laughed. Daniel's stomach twisted. He wanted to shout that they were wrong, that Emily was different. But the words stuck in his throat. He looked at Emily, waiting for her reaction. She didn't flinch. She calmly closed her book, stood up, and faced the group. You don't know me, she said firmly. And you don't know him either. If you can't be kind, then don't say anything at all. The group rolled their eyes, muttered under their breath, and walked away. Daniel looked at her in awe. How do you do that? Do what? She asked, sitting back down. Not care what they say. Emily shrugged. It's not that I don't care. It hurts sometimes. But I know who I am. And I know you're my friend. That's enough. Her words sank deep into Daniel's heart. Still, doubt tugged at him. What if they were right? What if Emily would leave him once she realized he didn't fit in? That evening, Daniel sat at his giant dining table again. His parents discussed money and meetings, their voices sharp and quick. He wanted to tell them about Emily, about how she defended him and taught him courage. But when he tried to speak, his father cut him off. "Daniel, you need to focus on your studies," his father said without looking up from his phone. "Friends are a distraction." His mother added, "Besides, people only want to be close to you because of who we are. Be careful whom you trust." Daniel's heart sank. They were saying the same thing the kids at school had whispered. Did that mean Emily was pretending too? That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He wanted to believe in Emily. He did believe in her. But his parents' voices kept echoing, "Be careful. Don't trust too easily." The next day Daniel avoided Emily. He sat at his desk quietly, answering with short words when she spoke to him. At lunch, he walked past the oak tree and sat alone on the far side of the playground. Emily noticed, of course. She always noticed. After a while she came over, sitting across from him in silence. Finally she asked, "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel shook his head. "No, it's just people keep saying things. About you. About me. My parents say it too. What if they're right?" Emily's eyes softened, but her voice was steady. "Daniel. Do you think I'm your friend because you're rich?" He shook his head quickly. "No. I mean, I don't know. I don't want it to be true." "Then trust me," Emily said. "I don't care about your money. I care about you. If other people can't see that, that's their problem." Daniel felt the knot in his chest loosen. "But what if they never stop talking?" "Then let them talk," Emily said. "We'll just keep being friends anyway. The people who matter will see the truth." Her words wrapped around Daniel like a blanket. Slowly, he nodded. "Okay. I'll trust you." Emily smiled, that same warm smile that had changed everything. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." The rest of the day. Daniel felt lighter again. The whispers didn't stop, but they didn't weigh him down as much. He realized something important. Having one true friend mattered more than having the approval of everyone else. That evening, as he tied his shoelaces before bed, he whispered to himself, "I'm not alone anymore." And for the first time, the house didn't feel quite so empty. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Every hallway Daniel walked down, he heard the same words: "She's using him. She just wants his money. He's too weak to know it." Jake, the loudest of them all, wasn't ready to give up either. One Friday afternoon, as Daniel and Emily headed toward the oak tree, Jake and his group blocked their way. "Hey, rich boy," Jake sneered. "Want to prove she's really your friend? Buy her something big. Then we'll see if she sticks around." Daniel froze. The old fear clawed at him. The crowd around them waited, eager for drama. His father's warning echoed in his ears: "Be careful whom you trust." Emily's voice cut through the noise. "I don't need him to buy me anything," she said firmly. Jake smirked. "Of course you'd say that. But we all know the truth." Daniel looked at Emily, then at Jake, then at the circle of eyes staring at him. His heart pounded, but this time, he remembered Emily's lesson. Bravery. He stepped forward. "No, you don't know the truth. Emily is my friend because she helped me when nobody else did. She taught me how to tie my shoes. She stood up for me. She believed in me when none of you did. That's what matters, not money." The playground fell silent. Jake opened his mouth to reply, but the crowd wasn't laughing this time. Some kids actually nodded. A few even looked ashamed. Jake's smirk faltered. And he walked away, his friends trailing after him. Daniel turned to Emily, his chest rising and falling with relief. She smiled at him, her eyes proud. Now that was bravery. From that day, things began to change. Not overnight, but slowly. Some kids still whispered, but fewer than before. Others started talking to Daniel, curious about the boy they had once ignored. They saw him laughing with Emily, standing taller, walking with confidence. Daniel realized something important: when you find one true friend, you don't need a crowd. Friendship wasn't about how many people stood beside you. It was about who stayed when everyone else turned away. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Collins gave the class a project. Write about the most important lesson you've learned this year. Daniel sat at his desk, pencil hovering over the paper. For the first time, he knew exactly what to write. The most important lesson I learned wasn't from a book. It was from a friend. I learned that being rich doesn't mean you have everything. I learned that sometimes you need someone to hold out their hand when you fall. I learned that real friends don't care about money, they care about you. And because of that, I am not afraid anymore. When he finished, he looked over at Emily. She was writing too, her face focused. Daniel smiled. That afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the playground emptied, Daniel and Emily sat under the oak tree one last time. Do you remember the first day we met? Emily asked. Daniel nodded. I fell. Everyone laughed, except you. Emily grinned. And now you can tie your shoes better than anyone. Daniel laughed softly. That wasn't the real lesson. No, Daniel said. The real lesson was that one true friend can change everything. Emily's smile widened. Exactly. They sat in silence for a while, the breeze rustling through the branches above them. Daniel felt peace in his heart. He wasn't the lonely rich boy anymore. He was Daniel. And he had a friend who saw him for who he truly was. And that made him richer than anyone. Thank you for reading this story of Daniel and Emily. It reminds us all that friendship, kindness, and courage matter far more than money or status. One true friend can change your entire life. If you enjoyed this story, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time.